This month of June, the month that some really officially kind of begins in earnest, where vacations are planned and taken. We have had a vacation theme every Sunday this month, so we're going to finish it up today. Before we move into July already, which I cannot believe, but July 4th, next Sunday. Hope to see you here. But the whole idea is that our consciousness never takes a vacation. It is always with us. In fact, it pre-paves our way ahead of us, determining exactly what our experience shall be. Our consciousness is all of our desires, our values, our thoughts, our emotions. All of that is already pre-paving our way. So today, this Sunday, we continue the theme with a question. Have you ever been driving to your vacation destination and encountered a roadblock? It may have delayed you for a little bit, perhaps for hours. Perhaps you even had your vacation canceled, or you had to take a detour on your trip. And I'm sure we've all had that kind of experience. So, how are roadblocks then a metaphor for our consciousness? Well, we build roadblocks in our consciousness all the time. So this morning's fuel for conversation is this question. Is your consciousness allowing the fullness of God to express through you, or has it set up roadblocks? Or another question is, are you being God's way, or are you being in God's way? Talk about flow. This is what we are talking about today, being in that flow. So to begin this theme, I want to share two statements that seem paradoxical, as most of life seems paradoxical. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, once said, "Spirit put the stamp of individuality upon itself and called it you." You. Ralph Waldo Emerson, famous line from him, he had a huge influence, anyone that's read Ernest Holmes knows on Ernest Holmes, huge influence. He once said, "We must get our bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuit." And we've heard that before because I've said it many times. So which is it, though? Which one of those two? Are we spirit individualized, or are we bloated nothingness? Your choice. We can be both. We go in and out, don't we? This seeming paradox is beautifully illustrated, I love this story, in a really great story that appears in the first Chicken Soup for the Soul book. It's the story of a group of monks who had a monastery. I'm going to read it. A monastery. They had in their monastery a giant clay Buddha. You might have heard this story before. The clay Buddha was enormous. It was 10.5 feet tall and even wider than that, 11 feet wide. And it weighed 2.5 tons. In 1957, the monastery was being renovated. So everything, including this enormous giant Buddha, had to be moved. When the crane began to lift this giant statue, the weight of it was so tremendous that it began to crack. What's more, the rain began to fall. The head monk, who was concerned about the damage to the sacred Buddha, decided to lower the statue back to the ground and cover it with a tarp, and to protect it from the rain and try to move it again the next day. Later that evening, the head monk went out to check on the rain and the giant Buddha, the sacred Buddha. He shined his flashlight under the tarp to see if it was starting to get dry. As the flashlight reached a place where the Buddha had cracked, the monk noticed a little gleam of shining light back at him. He thought, how strange is that? And as he took a closer look at this gleam of light, he wondered if there was something underneath the clay. He ran back inside, got a chisel and a hammer, and very delicately started to chip away, and began to chip away at that clay. As he knocked off small shards of clay, the little gleam grew brighter and bigger. Many hours of labor went by before the monk stood face to face with the most extraordinary thing he had ever seen, a golden Buddha, solid gold Buddha. Now historians now believe, so this is kind of like a true story, now believe that several hundred years before the head monk's discovery, the Burmese army was about to invade Thailand. The monks in the land at the time, realizing that their country would soon be attacked, covered their precious, priceless gold Buddha with a thick outer covering of clay in order to keep it from being looted by the Burmese. Unfortunately, it appears that the Burmese army slaughtered all the monks, and the true nature of the Buddha was buried with them until that day in 1957 when the Buddha had to be moved. Spirit put the stamp of individuality upon itself and called it you. Is that the golden part of who we are? We are, as many of us know, so covered up with clay, with heaviness. So we've been chipping away and getting to that gold, because that's what's within us. That gold spiritual light, that divine light of the infinite. But we must get our bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine surface, because that's the clay. That's the heaviness. We are so covered up with the clay, all our beliefs that hold us back, and we can't get in touch with our divine essence. And I love the phrase, you are golden, because we truly are. Each and every one of us is a bright golden light. We really are. If we could but see that, if we couldn't just see bodies, if we could just see the essence of who we are. And using the metaphor today, our job is to remove the roadblocks, the clay from our consciousness, so that we might express our divinity and get to the gold. The truth is, you are the way of God. You are the way that Spirit individualizes and shows up and expresses on this planet. Each and every one of us. That's so incredibly cool. And I believe so incredibly true. God works for us by working through us. Ernest Holmes tells us that all the time. Works through us. So say this after me. I am the way of God.
I am the way of God.
Yes, you are, and I claim that as truth. You are the way of God, individualized, showing up on this planet, no two alike. The Spirit doesn't have to repeat itself. It's limitless, right? In the book, The Eye of the Storm by Gary Simmons, he writes this: you are the way of God. Your entire being is created to be an expression of God. Everything real in you gives expression to God. Sometimes, however, you are in the way of God expressing through you. It's important, he writes, for you to know the difference between when you are being the way of God and when you are being in the way of God. And And that's God expressing in and through and as you. So let's do a little experiment. Imagine picking a young child up, which we did yesterday. Imagine picking a young child up and holding her close in a loving embrace. And imagine that love flowing through you to the child. When you love the child, can't you just feel the divine love moving through you? It's just unconditional love, loving through you. Wherever you are allowing God to move through you, you are the way of the divine. You are the way. You are expressing the way of the infinite flow of spirit. A child's purity, innocence, needs your love, and invites you to open your heart. So that unconditional love allows you to move into the fullness of God's love, and that can be shared. This divine loving essence. And in your experience of being the way of the divine, is there any lack? Do you feel lack when you're feeling that love? I don't think so. Is there anything that can make that moment any better? Usually not. Pure love. Herein is a demonstration of your true abundance. When you are the way of God, you experience the abundant nature of this infinite source of all good. You experience it. Jesus told us, I have come so that you might have life and might have it more abundantly. More abundantly. And now here comes the hard part, because it's, like humans, there's always a hard part. When someone who has hurt or you have perceived betrayed you and treated you unfairly, see this person in front of you as you did that young child. What's the difference? What's the difference? Are you now the way of God or in the way of God? The difficulty you feel in loving this person unconditionally is that's the way of God. So I'm not saying that, well, I'm certainly not saying that this is simple and easy, because it is not. It can be a great challenge to us to see the divine in someone that has hurt us in any deep way. But when we let our ego get involved, which we do because we're humans, that's what happens. We get in the way of this divine energy expressing. And so all of that can be extremely challenging, but worth it. No doubt, you've had every justification for these feelings and good reason for not warming up to that person. But can you see that you are literally in the way of the divine, in the flow? Let's just use this energy. God is energy. Flow expressing. So if you cannot truly love that person as much as that little child that you so eagerly embrace, there is that block. And that's our biggest challenge. That is the clay. That's what holds us back from truly experiencing the abundance of God's love. Because it's unconditional. God doesn't judge. We don't believe in a judging being, right? That's what makes this so appealing to me. This energetic force of life doesn't judge. Doesn't judge. Is that person that you feel betrayed you any less deserving of God's love? That's the question. In fact, that person probably needs your love, needs any love, more desperately than that young child. Can you see that this person, if he or she had been loved in that way that that child is unconditionally loved, probably the whole experience would be a whole lot different. Our intention this morning is not to make excuses, for other people's behavior, not at all, but rather for us to awaken. It holds us back when we feel resentful. It's a heavy energy within us when we resent someone else. So we do it to awaken to our own divinity. That's why we do that forgiveness work. So it's to awaken to the deeper sense that you are and have been created in the image and likeness of this divine energy, God itself. This perception is necessary. It's necessary to a full understanding of spiritual healing. That's what spiritual healing is. Healing is not something God does for us. It is our remembering within ourselves, truly, what God is. That's the healing. That's the healing. The revealing of the divine presence through us, our unity with all life. We talk about the oneness. That's what it truly means. That's what it truly means. And at some point, probably when we're getting ready to leave this planet, we might fully awaken and see that all of that was in vain. It wasn't as important when we let something take over our lives and keep us stuck. We're like that gold Buddha weighed down with the clay. So a good illustration of this idea centers around a man asleep on a bed. Man or a woman, sleep on the bed. Can you look, and you can look into that person's dreams. He seems to be in a blizzard, struggling with the wind and the snow, and you really want to help him, and you're looking into the stream, and how do you help him? You wake him up. And that's how simple life is. We've heard that. Life is simple. We make it difficult. Very true. We do. And that's just the way we are as humans, going through this life. Our job is to awaken from the dream that we are anything other than the way of God. Meister Eckhart, the German theologian who lived in the late 1200s, early 1300s, said, God is bound to act, to pour himself into thee as soon as he shall find thee ready. God expects but one thing of you. That is, that you should come out of yourself insofar as you are a created being, and let God be God in you. Let the divine be the divine in us. So, what does being the way of God look like? So what does it look like, and what does it not look like? From the Tao Te Ching, by Lao Tzu in 500 BCE, this is New Thought, Ancient Wisdom, right? This is old, wrote, you are born soft and supple. Dead we are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant. Dead they are brittle and dry. Thus, whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. Are we living life? Or are we the walking dead, looking like we're living life? If you are judging, blaming, fearful, dishonest, unwilling, unforgiving, doubting, rigid, stubborn, unkind, resentful, feeling unworthy, or just plain negative, then you are likely in the way of God, and you can feel that. You're not in that flow. If you are the way of God, then you are open, receptive, willing, loving, affirming, supportive, accepting for self and others, trusting. You are radiating the life of the divine in all that you say and that you do. If a conversation, you have conversations with people, becomes blaming or condescending, you enter that discussion with openness and understanding. If people are stuck in how terrible a situation looks like or feels like, gently and lovingly remind them of the infinite possibilities, the limitless potential that surround them, thereby being a vehicle through which the divine can flow through. So the opinions of those the only purpose is to reign. Have you ever met people like this? Their only purpose, it seems, in life is to reign on, as they say, rain on the parade. It's like constantly, you walk in the room, you know what's going to happen. There are some people like that. Thank God I don't know that many anymore. But those people are not in that flow. And how happy truly are they? You can bring a playful energy to situations as you fill yourself with the awareness that you are in the flow of God, the way of God. This is when you know that you truly are in that flow. You can feel it. You just feel it. You feel the openness. You feel the lightness of living life. New Thought, I'm going to end it with New Thought writer Eric Butterworth, one of our favorites, wrote this: "There is something within us that can lead us and direct us if we will but let it. It is higher than the thought of any man. It has nothing to do with creed or profession or confession or the restriction of theological dogmas. It is in the integrity of our own mind," he writes, "in the silence of our own soul, that we find the immediate presence of the divine being inhabiting us and the universe. It is a presence within us which every great thinker has sensed, which all the poets have sung about, and all the great spiritual teachers have proclaimed. We are told to repair to our own mind, get away from the objective confusion and struggle of life, and enter this secret place. As we enter it directly, we need no guide, no mediator. There is nothing that can keep us from it," he says. "There is no power that can withhold it. It is ours to accept. It will always come back to us to accept or decline. It's that simple. Yes or no." I shared a statement from the Sufi poet Rumi on the first Sunday that we talked about the vacation mode. And it was this, the one that I really love: "Out beyond the ideas of wrong thinking and right thinking, there is a field. I will meet you there." Love that. We all love Rumi, right? We met in that field 2 weeks ago with a very powerful circle of love meditation, a short meditation. We won't do that now, but I do want us to enter into that field again, a beautiful field. So just, if you will, close your eyes for a moment and travel to that field of infinite possibilities. It is the land of the great I am. Let's go there now, letting go of all preconceived ideas that no longer serve us, no longer are for our good, and opening to an easy and effortless flow of limitless good that is always present and available. This is the place where you are willing, flexible, affirming, accepting, where you radiate your higher self, your divine nature in all that you say and do, letting go, surrendering, letting go, and letting God take over, surrendering to judgment, no blaming, none of that stuff, no fear. This is where the field of infinite potential resides. We are, each and every one of us, a golden Buddha. There is that light is within each and every one of us, and we allow that divine golden self to shine through, to guide us, to fill our every thought, our every emotion, and our every action. And so we let it be, as the song said, we let it be, and so it is.